morning. Good morning. Thank you, choir. Aren't they amazing? This is amazing time to be here. Thank you for the show. You know, as a speaker, you always wonder, like, what's the music going to be? Is it going to match your message? It was perfect. I also want to thank Reverend Sharon Dunn for inviting me. I wanted to come here for some time, and I'm here today. And we're all here. You ever plan out something, and something big you've got to do, like a talk? Like I planned out this talk, and then all of a sudden, it changes. Like you get to do the plan, you're just gonna start the plan, and you go, oh no, I can't do that. Anybody? Oh, it just changed on me. That's what happened to me this morning. You know, I don't listen to the news. So much negativity. I kind of try to, no news conspiracy here. You know, CNN, constantly negative news. I try to stay away from it. But here's what I believe about the news. I'll always know what I need to know, right? It just seems to get to us when we need to know something. So this morning I opened up my iPhone and I'm like, what is it? What's the weather going to be like, right? It's been hot as Hades. We skipped spring. I think we skipped spring. And so I'm scrolling to find out the weather. So if you have an iPhone, you know this, that it first lines up news articles, and then you have to go down to find the weather. So I get to the end, and I see news article lines, and synagogue jumped out at me, right? And I hit that news line. How many know about what happened yesterday at Chabad of Poway Synagogue? Yes. If you don't know, a white man walked in with a machine gun and began firing. And this isn't how I anticipated starting my talk today, but we need to talk about this today. And we need to be the piece of it that starts to heal the consciousness behind it. Yes? Yes. And so I want to start out today's service just with a moment and having us go within, take a deep breath, just let it out. And I invite you to join with me now in consciousness, and if it's helpful to do so, to put your hands up and just send this healing love. Open our hearts to Chabad of Poway and the congregation. Send that healing love and energy to the congregants, to their family, to their friends, to the first responders, to the nurses, to the doctors. Just send that healing love of light. And that they are not alone. They are not alone. We are one with them in this, and knowing that the Most High Presence is there with them. And I'm going to ask you to draw a bigger circle now, a harder circle to draw, but we must draw it because there's no one outside the one. I want you to draw it around the man that walked in. This piece of the divine that is lost, that is filled with hatred and separation. That is a hell unto itself. To send healing there too. To cast out the darkness. For we know there is no reality in it. And we call forth the healing, the love, and the oneness to be restored. Together we say, so thank you so much for walking through. So I read the article, and the article was told through the eyes of a father when he started hearing the gunfire and the shouts to get down, and he immediately looked for his children, and his grandfather was on top of the 2-year-old on the ground, and he was looking for his daughter. And thankfully, they all made it out alive. One woman lost her life, and several were injured. At the end of the article, they ended the article like this, and the question in everyone's mind was, why? Isn't that your question? Why? It ended, why? The question is why, and we pray. And we pray, but we need to do more. We need to answer that question of why. And so today, in today's message, we're going to take that on. Are you willing to journey with me through that question?
Oh, yes.
Yes, we need to do this. So, the message today is about diversity and oneness, right? And bringing all of that diversity into the consciousness of oneness. Because when we don't do that, there's something called otherness. Otherness, the other. And when that belief can remain active in the one mind, the collective consciousness, that's when these things can happen. See, they couldn't happen in the oneness, right? There has to be an otherness. That's how the Holocaust happened. Those were the other people. Less than, not worthy, not one of us, so we can do things to them. We got to heal this otherness. And it's like it's in everything. You know, we have to stand guard in our mind. My journey, my personal journey, I'm going to share a little bit of it with you, has been one of otherness. I grew up in Texas when I was 4 years old. For some time I lived there. And I loved to be out in the hot Texas sun, swimming. It was great, I loved it. But my skin, if you notice, I tan. And in the hot Texas sun, I turned black, literally black. Well, my mother was as white as that wall, and so was my brother. Now, back in the 70s, that was a problem. I didn't realize that. I was 4 years old. I would beg my brother, take me to the store with you. No, he's older. And then my mother would make him take me to the store, and I'd have to wear hot Texas sun, long sleeves and long pants. He didn't want to be accused of having a black suit. See, that's the thought process, the other. My mother, English was her second language, so I grew up with a front row seat to seeing her being treated as other. I watched people talk louder to her, slower to her, down to her. She was brilliant. She was an amazing, smart woman. She was in the other. And then I took it on. I didn't want anybody to meet my mother. I didn't want them to hear that she sounded different. Right? Front row seat. Later, I began to appreciate her. And then, in my 40s, I experienced another situation of otherness. One I hadn't really anticipated, but I had discovered that there was a part of me I needed to heal that I wasn't embracing. So I was actually rejecting a piece of myself. Anybody ever reject a piece? Oh no, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to not be able to do math or whatever it is for you, right? But this was a big one. So I experienced something called gender dysphoria. So that is the diagnosis of people who experience themselves to be transgender. I'm a transgender man. What that means is I came into the world in a female body that I didn't identify with, and I transitioned my gender to male. And you think I experienced some otherness in the process? Oh, I did. I transitioned on the job in a very public position, working with the city council, working with a commission. I couldn't have been more public. And there's two sides to this coin. I experienced some love and acceptance I would have never guessed from some people. Just opened me up in ways I never expected. But I experienced some otherness. People that used to talk to me at work, they'd pass me by in the hallway. Right? You could feel it. It was painful. Now, I'm not just telling you this story because I know about otherness. I'm telling you this story for a very important reason. I still do it. I have been guilty of otherness to other people. It's like it's in everything. It's in the news. It's in the media. We're so bombarded. Right? It slips in sometimes. We don't even notice it. So we're going to talk about how to notice it and how to cut it off today. So what does Science of Mind have to say on this subject? Well, in the We Believe statements, that is the foundation for religious science, we say we believe in the unity of all life, and that the innermost God and the outermost God are one. That doesn't leave anything out or anyone out. But how do we rectify this? We have this humanness, right? How do we rectify the diversity of opinions and lifestyles and the way people are showing up in oneness, right? That's hard sometimes, isn't it? Yes? Yes. It's hard sometimes. Dr. Tom Sannem, who wrote the source book for Science of Mind, he has an answer to this. He says, to see all as sacred and individualized expressions of the divine. To see all as sacred and individualized expressions of the divine. Right now, I want you to turn to somebody and say, you're divine and I love you. You're divine and I love you. You're divine and I love you. Right now, we're going to see you're divine and I I love you. That feels good, doesn't it? Isn't it great to receive? Thank you. Thank you. Now here's the trick. Here's the deal. We need to remember this when our neighbor starts the lawnmower at 7 a.m. Anybody? I'm laying in my bed. And I love you. I love you. We need to remember this when a coworker starts saying stuff, right, in other rooms. We need to remember this when the in-laws show up, the ones that didn't think you should have gotten married, or whatever, right? We need to remember this when we're walking down the street and the light is getting dark and there's a dark-skinned man in a hoodie walking past us. Does our mind want to go crazy sometimes? The images that the entertainment and news has thrown at us? That's our work. That's our work. Let's not miss our work. And we also need to celebrate diversity. What would life be like without diversity? You ever thought about that? Like if there was just one flower, you wouldn't be here. Okay, so there'd just be that, right? There'd just be one person. You don't have to pick one size and one whatever. Diversity is not only the spice and beauty of life, it's a necessity for it. The web of life, the biome. We love the butterfly, but don't let the mosquito land on me. But that's an opportunity, right, to remember. And you can shoot away. Right? To remember that that's part of the divine. Reverend Blackman did a sermon, and for those of you taking notes, you may want to make note of her sermon, at CSL Dallas on spiritual activism. I highly recommend this video. You can go find it on YouTube. And it's not what you think it's going to be. Sometimes when we hear the A word, activism, we think it's going to be angry, hard driving, shoving it down our throats. Not that at all. It is powerful, it is loving, it is beautiful, and it is highly directive and informative. I watch other sermons to create my own sermons. It's what we do, I think. And when I was watching that sermon, she said something very interesting about diversity. She was at a CSL conference and she asked somebody, hey, where's the session on diversity? And the person responded, oh, we don't need diversity, we just need unity. Yeah, did you catch that? We don't need diversity, we just need unity. And the reason I'm calling that out right now is it's hard sometimes to take in diversity and understand what that means and want to be a part of it and walk through it. So we just spiritual bypass right over it, right? And that's part of our work too, to catch when we might be doing it. So, wonderful, wonderful talk by Dr. Blackman. So, you know how I said I'm missing it too sometimes? Well, we're in church, and I love the Catholic practice of confession. So I'm going to be confessing that I missed it. A couple years ago, I was in between jobs, and I was Ubering. And you meet a lot of people in Uber. I suggest it, by the way, if you want to learn about diversity. It's awesome. I have great stories, many, many good stories. There was this one pickup, though, that changed me, and I want to share it with you. So the call came in, and you know, it shows the person's name, and sometimes a picture, sometimes not. And the name was Shakira. And I was in North Highlands. So if you know North Highlands at all, not the best part of town, not the worst, but not the best. So I pull up to the light, and I'm about to make a left, and I see this woman outside the business with her two sons. She's wearing a red bandana with a bull's cap on top. She's a small black woman with what appears to be her two sons, with a big oversized bull's jacket, some jeans, and shoes. And right away, without even thinking, I felt like, I don't want to pick this up. I don't want to pick up this call. And I caught myself. I went, what was that? Why am I feeling that? What divisiveness or otherness is going on within me right now? What assumptions am I making? And trust me, I felt bad about it. I didn't feel good about it. But I wasn't going to deny I was feeling it. See, that's really important because it helped me catch a moment of otherness I was participating in consciousness, right? And we all know as religious scientists that our work is here, yes? And that small things lead to big things, and it goes into the one mind. And if I don't catch this otherness, what am I adding to that at some point becomes manifest as a shooting, as a genocide, as a bullying, right? So it was my habit to get to know my people when they got in, because that's the way I roll. And I thought, I'm going to have a conversation with this woman. So clearly she loved the Bulls. So I said, oh, you must be a Bulls fan. Oh, yeah, I'm from Chicago. She was talking up Chicago. And I said, well, what brought you to Sacramento? She goes, oh, well, I came here for my boys. I want them to have a better life. See, here the schools are better. They wouldn't be running with that crowd. Like she was telling me all about, I had a hard life. I don't want that for my boys. I think my heart started to soften. I think I felt a little bad. She goes, oh, can we make a stop? I said, sure. And so we stopped by McDonald's. You know why we stopped by McDonald's? She didn't have a lot of money. She sent her boys in to participate in the school fundraiser. She wanted them to be able to participate. So they went in, they came out with their meals, and she asked if they could eat in the car. And I said, oh, absolutely. And she turned back to her boys and she said, not one crumb hits this floor. And them boys are like, yes, ma'am. You know how many people would leave crumbs in my car? Lots. Not them boys. We made one more detour on the trip, and she asked to stop at this store, which ended up being the liquor store. And she came out with a little brown bag. But you know what? That isn't who she is. She's not the hat. She's not the brown bag, whatever was in it. She's the love. The love and the courage that she's demonstrating for her family to do better. I could have missed that. I could have been like this on the drive, which I'm sure she got a lot of. Let's not miss those moments. Let's tune into that little vibration of resistance and push past it, so we can have a new reality of the people around us. Yes? Yes. Thank you for taking that in. I appreciate that. So, 3 things we can do. I've identified 3 things that we can do. The first one I like to call Rumi's Field. We need to get to Rumi's Field. Okay, everyone, if you haven't heard the quote, right? It's part of a whole poem, actually. There is a field beyond right and wrong. I will meet you there. I'll meet you there. Doesn't that just heal your soul? Like, you don't have to convince anybody to think like you, be like you. Just meet me there. Let's have a cup of coffee. There's somebody who does this really well, and I want to point him out. His name is Daryl Davis, and if you have a chance, Google him, please. Daryl Davis is a black man who fights hatred with friendship. That's the article about him. Who's heard of him? Anybody heard of Daryl? Okay, you want to know Daryl, because what Daryl does is he practices this Rumi field. He does it very well. He befriends white supremacists. He becomes a friend. And ultimately what happens once they know Daryl is they can't be white supremacists anymore. Really. Men are scrubbing tattoos off their bodies because they can't do the hate anymore, because they've experienced the love in the field and the oneness. See, and so the key to getting to Rumi's field is connection and commonality. Connection and commonality. So you want to move towards people that you feel you don't have connection and commonality with, because the only way to have it is to start it. Just like Daryl. And then when you enter that field, look for the commonality. What did he talk about? He probably talked about the love of his family. That man probably had love of his family. Love of community. Worried about the economy. Right? How are we going to pay our bills? Right? These are all things that we have commonality around. Let's start there. And then when we run into the differences, let's exercise a little acceptance, a little tolerance. Otherwise, they go outside our circle and they become the other. Yes? Now, I'm not saying we should tolerate really evil and bad things. We need to say no to those, to bullying, right? To acts of violence. We need to say no to those things, clearly. But if we're going to connect and we're going to get to Rumi's field, I suggest that we embody some of those things. The next suggestion I have for healing otherness. This is a fun one. I love this one. I did it when I was becoming a practitioner. You might have done it as well. It's where you see God in everything, and I call this putting on the eyes of oneness. The eyes of oneness, right? And you can do it anywhere. The eyes of oneness when you're in the grocery store and looking at everybody there, no matter what they're buying, right? Eyes of oneness. I am one with that. I am one with the tree. I am one with the person. I am one with the sky. I am one with this talk. And you, the barrier in you begins to dissolve. And you get this experience of oneness, and you see God in everything. So I did this when I was in practitioner training every day. I'd be getting on the train, looking at the seat, that's God. Looking down at the ground as I'm walking, oh, there's a Carl's Jr. cup, that's God. It started out as a soda cup, then it got smashed and became trash, and then I picked it up and it became recycling. And it was all on this journey, right? Because there's nothing manifest that's outside the body of God. And the only thing that made it trash was my judgment. Yeah, you do that. You love the flowers in your garden, but what about the blooming weeds? Still flowers. Difference is a judgment. Put on the eyes of oneness. And you start to see even common things in beautiful and new and amazing ways. Try it for a week. It'll really change your perspective. The third one is to cherish our oneness. Cherish our oneness. How do we do that? Well, we show care, right? When you cherish something, you care for it and you protect it. So one way to do this is spiritual activism. Spiritual activism. You might be wondering, well, what's spiritual activism? I think it comes down to this. I think it comes down to being for something, not against something, right? Mother Teresa, back in the 60s, I think, knew this. The war protesters came to Mother Teresa and they said, hey, come protest with us. It'd be really great if you're there. The media will come. We'll get a lot of attention to, put an end to this war. And they were really all fired up. And I loved her response. She said, well, I'm not going to join your protest. She said, but if you have a march for peace, I'll be there. See, she understood that angry energy was the same angry energy behind war. We don't want that. Sometimes I think people wonder why CSL people aren't activists. We don't want war. We don't want anger. And there's a right place for anger. I'm not saying anger is bad, but if that's all you got, is to be against everything, what are you for? Because what you're for is what heals it. Yes? So spiritual activism. And Dr. Blackman will be happy to help you some more with that subject. So there's something I do that I'd like to offer to you, and I just coined this. I don't know. I don't even know if it's a thing, but it's my thing, so I'll share it with you. It's microactivism, and it's what I'm doing today. So today is the first time ever in a CSL church during my sermon I have told people I'm transgender. And I want to thank you for taking that and holding that with love and respect. And here's the deal. So this is how I operate. If after the service you come up to me and you accidentally use a female pronoun versus a male pronoun, that's okay. I want you to know that's okay. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to go talk about you to somebody. I'm just going to gently say, oh, it's he, him. It's okay, right? That's my way of creating that bridge between what we don't know, what we're trying to learn and embrace, and to get to the other side. And we can all be a bridge for that. Yes? Yes. The other thing I do is I let myself be seen. And I remember I almost didn't do this. Early in my transition, I went to a transgender advocacy conference. We have those, if you didn't know. And I learned a lot. I learned, number one, just because I'm transgender didn't mean I didn't have things to learn. I had a lot to learn, because I didn't walk around in them. And one thing I learned is some transgender people decide to be something called stealth. Okay, what that means, that term means, is that they are not out in the community as a transgender person. They're just in their new gender, at work, in their spiritual community, wherever they go. They just don't tell people. They just want to live that way, and that's fine. No problem, that's fine. They get that right. Yes, they get that right. And so I figured this out, and I had to decide, okay, was I going to be stealth? Was I going to tell people? Like, big decisions, lots of decisions, more decisions than I care to tell you about. But at the end of the conference, they had something called the memorandum. I didn't know what that was. And I walked into the hall, everybody was there, and these pictures of beautiful, vibrant souls smiling and shining. And each one of them had been a victim of a hate crime. Most of them had lost their lives that year. And what I also found out, that the suicide rates amongst transgender people are almost as high as 1 in 5. In fact, there was a young trans man who took his life this month, here in Sacramento. I saw that and I said, I cannot not be seen. I can't. For me, until this is done, until this is healed. So I made a decision to start to show myself, not a big waving the flag, that's just not me. But maybe to a coworker, maybe to someone in my spiritual community who doesn't know. I actually spoke that year after that conference at the CSL Summer Camp for Teens, 250 teens, and told them my story. And at the end, they stood up, they were raving, screaming, crying, all kinds of things. And that talk actually generated them starting a 3rd set of cabins for gender variant youth, so they didn't have to be forced into one or the other box. I had no idea. No idea. We never know what God uses us for. Yes. Now, you may not be transgender, and you may not even think you're in another category, but you can always do something. You can come ask me, how'd you know? And I'll tell you. And maybe you'll tell somebody, right? How'd you know you were transgender? Just be curious. Learn, expand, and share. That's what I think microactivism is. And it's powerful. It starts to weave a thread of connection amongst us. So what I'd like to do now is just invite you to go within. Let's just go within for a moment. Into your own heart, into your own being, into your own soul. And as we do this, I want you to be gentle with yourself. Gentle. We're just on this journey to heal the planet. And it starts with us. And as you go within, I just want you to think, is there anyone I have put out of my heart? Is there anyone that I've kept at an arm's distance? Maybe it's that neighbor I don't really understand across the street. Maybe it's somebody here at the center that you haven't connected with and you don't know why. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's a piece of yourself. I want you to just find that and hold that in your heart. Breathe into that. And just open a piece of your spirit to heal it. Invite that high presence of the One in to help you, to hold you up, to draw the circle bigger, to include that which you have left out. Just think of one thing you could do. One thing. Maybe it's pray. Maybe it's meditate. Maybe it's pick up the phone. Maybe it's go over and say hello. Make that your work. So I just invite you back into the room now. Thank you for going on this journey with me. And I would like to end today's talk with a quote from Gandhi. Our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the beauty and the test of our civilization. Namaste. Thank you so much.